briefly review some of the things we've accomplished at the museum in the last 3 years, since we haven't seen you since then. One of our biggest projects was receiving the archives of the Kirksville Daily Express newspaper when they moved out of their historic building on McPherson Street. And if you know what archives is, it's not a small thing. The archives are huge books that are the full size of a newspaper. And then we have the problem of storage. Well, they had shelving that is very close together, and you only stack maybe 3 or 4 books together. And my husband, Donald Ellis, he went and broke all those down. The newspaper graciously gave us those shelving units. And then he took them over to the museum and then put them back together, which was quite a puzzle. With another grant, we received a modern style microfilm machine, which made it possible for us to use many of the many reels of microfilm that we already had. In the fall of 2021, we added a special display cabinet to the museum, and we became the home of the Missouri National Guard Hall of Fame. The Historical Society has 2 columns in the newspaper. Larry has the column turning back the pages, and yours truly has the history column, and we just about fill a page. As far as our magazines go, they're undoubtedly our biggest success. Although they're quite expensive to produce and to mail, they brought us revenue in the form of lots of new members. At the last count, we had 572 members. And over the past 3 years, our magazine has taken us on quite a ride. Hopefully you were on board too. In January 2020, we were very patriotic with Larry Evans' story on the Coy brothers. In April, we took a ride on the orphan train, and again, our guide was Pam. Then we visited the huge Spring Creek Ranch in the northwest corner of Adair County with Larry Evans. In July, we went to the country to see Maple Hill, again with Pam, then reminisced about a Pennsylvania squire who came here rich in the 1870s and went away broke. And then we moved into a new Kirksville post office with Postmaster Boyd Funk, father of our board member Linda Hudnall. In January 2021, we learned how to quilt with Meredith Wilcox, then experienced the worldwide Spanish flu of 1918. In July, we relived the joys of the 1957 swimming pool in Kirksville, and we learned about the first pool in 1920 over by Bellacina's that few people knew about in a tent show with Toby and Susie, and took a ride down the ski slopes in the glory days of Rainbow Basin. We ended the summer of 2021 by honoring the graves of 2 Revolutionary soldiers buried in Adair County, Thomas Lake and James Fletcher. In October, we rode the Puddle Jumper Express train out to Imogene Bell at Stahl and Novinger. Then we celebrated the bicentennial of Missouri becoming a state and the 180th birthday of Adair County. Then we mourned the passing of an Adair County landmark with Adair County's first church, Bear Creek, when it was torn down. In that same month, we reminisced with Glenn Novinger and the early days of Elm Grove Farm in Adair County. We also journeyed to 5 different Army posts with Glenn Novinger and returned to Kirksville to buy some cattle at the Kirksville Sale Barn with the Baileys. In July of this year, we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the creation of Thousand Hills State Park and rode through the Big Creek Valley before it was flooded with forest land. Finished the month out with a ride on Ozark Airlines at the Kirksville Airport. What an adventure it's been for our riders and hopefully for you, our readers. We hope to take you on many more journeys.
Years ago, 1917, just weeks before I became the wandering spirit that you see before you today, I was sitting on the porch of my grand old house in Kirksville, Missouri, gazing across the street into a park. Some workmen were busy putting up a statue of me in my honor. Some folks from the Sojourners Club had hired a sculptor from Washington, D.C. to portray me to keep my waning spirit alive. It looks something like this. Perhaps you've seen it? I worked alone on the frontier at first, but over time, settlers moved into eastern Kansas around me, and I was forced to curtail my activities. Seems like some folks started referring to me as a midnight walking grave robber in a league with the devil. Remembering all these stories about the beginnings of osteopathy, all its struggles against the many obstacles that history would throw in its path, the Civil War, the wanderings in the wilderness across Kansas and Missouri until osteopathy found a foothold in Kirksville, Missouri. Well, there are so many stories over the years. People have told me that I should find someone to write them down. Maybe Mr. Mark Twain himself, who I treated, by the way. Now, I can't tell you exactly what for. That is confidential doctor-patient information. The historians will just have to dig that up on their own. But there are so many stories, it's hard to know exactly where to begin, much less how to end. Still, El Dorado Springs, Missouri, where I had a large practice going. And I was having lunch with 3 young allopathic medical doctors, Ward, Hatton, and David. We were finishing up. I was putting on my coat, getting ready to leave, when Ward took me by the arm, looked me in the eye very earnestly, and said, Dr. Snell, I need to remind you that you promised to open up a school. You see here before you your first 3 students. We are eager to enroll. Now, the road from that bag of bones in Baldwin, Kansas in the 1850s to the opening of the first school of osteopathy in Kirksville, Missouri in 1892 was a long one, filled with many obstacles along the way. And the most formidable obstacle of all in those early years was one that cast a long shadow over the whole country at the time, and that was the war. The threat of civil war was a persistent backdrop to life in Kansas. For periods of time, family life, farming, medicine went along normally. But those times were punctuated by periods of violence and upheaval. And that upheaval meant that the body politic was in the grips of a serious disease, slavery. Children were pulled from their parents' arms and sold off in the market. It was July 12, 1904, Osteopathic Day at the St. Louis World's Fair, the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. And what a grand and grandiose affair it was. That exposition proposed to celebrate the whole sweep of man's progress, from mankind's early beginnings right down to our enlightened age, the dawn of the 20th century. 1,200 osteopaths came together that day from all the 4 corners of the earth to do reverence to the long road traveled, from humble beginnings, a bag of bones in Baldwin, Kansas, to St. Louis, and the greatest fair of all time, which was now giving osteopathy a prominent showplace, as well it should have. But then there was one more thing. There was talk of putting up a statue to honor me, to remember me, to keep my spirit alive. Some folks apparently felt that my spirit was already on its way out. There was talk of starting up a statue fund, getting donations, and just what that statue should look like. Well, I was a bit concerned about that last thing and thought I should have some say in what a statue of my spirit looked like. For one thing, I'd hate for it to be sitting in a park somewhere for all eternity, all got up like a gentleman doctor from St. Louis with a pair of polished shoes, a double-breasted coat, a tie, and a silk hat. I arrived in St. Louis the day before Osteopathic Day. The whole town was in a festive mood. On every street corner, bands were playing that catchy tune that the whole country was singing at the time. Meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair.
Thank you for coming.